Hello, hello. We are live. And maybe you get to see my little neck roll starting the stretch before the live. Thank you for being here. I am just getting my questions loaded up here. Thank you everyone for sending those in advance. And as always, you may leave questions in the chat on YouTube. Or if you're watching this recording, you can leave your questions in the open thread. So from now on, I'll be creating a open thread in Substack, which is just a spot where you can put all of your questions as comments, because I know otherwise they kind of end up in all these different places. So that'll be a way for us to collect them in advance of going live. And you can see everybody else's questions too, which I think is helpful. So on the agenda for today, we are going to talk about heart rate variability, otherwise known as HRV. We are going to talk about my travel smoothie. And I just realized that I forgot to grab my little like props to show you, but I have it close by so I can show you my actual travel smoothies. So I'll take you through that. And then we have some questions from the community. So let's call these general Q&A regarding continuous glucose monitoring and foods that spiked my blood sugar or did not. So that is blood sugar balance and the monitor that I was wearing that you were probably familiar with that was tracking my glucose and what I learned from that experience, basically. We'll talk about juicing, and maybe we'll talk about colonics. I think there are a couple of questions that we might not get to this session, but there are always more questions than we can get to, and I will answer those as time goes on. And I think another little update for everybody to know is that I'm going to start these sessions more and more talking about some of the things that I feel are particularly important. And we'll always do Q&A. We'll always have a conversation that is, a dialogue and open for any of you to help direct. But I also feel like it's nice to have some focus and some themes for these conversations so that it's not entirely miscellaneous, I would say, or a little bit too scattered. So I'll just take the initiative there and give you some of the topics that I think are important as we move along. So on that note, let's start by talking about HRV, or heart rate variability. And so I started wearing an Oura ring. The camera's opposite, so I'm always going in the opposite direction. So I started wearing an Oura ring, a couple months ago, earlier this year. And it measures a lot of things. It measures heart rate and body temperature and sleep and recovery and cycle and so many things. And one of the things that it measures that I had never measured before but always was very interested in is heart rate variability. And heart rate variability is the amount of time between our heartbeats. And it fluctuates slightly, but it fluctuates very, very slightly. So you can only measure this with a device. And irregularity in that fluctuation is actually ideal. So we kind of think, oh, well, isn't just, perfect consistency ideal? Well, actually not, because heart rate variability, as you'll see, is very closely linked to the way that our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system states respond to stress. And if we are dead, then we have no response, right? It is just this flat line. If we are very much alive and very much kind of attuned to our environment, and we have all of the chemicals and the sense perception and all the things that we need to understand what's going on in the world, consciously and subconsciously, then we respond very dynamically and we recover from that. So if something stressful happens, you want your body to be able to respond and to respond quickly, right? Not overactively, but appropriately. And when you recognize that this is not a threat or the threat is over, to recover and to return to a really nice baseline. And something that we don't maybe think about often is even something like this. I'm teaching to you, I'm presenting to you. So there's a heightened state of stress or alertness or activity that will be in my body throughout this entire, conversation, because it's heightened, it's active, it's more of a dynamic experience. I'm not meditating. And then when it's over, I want my body to come all the way down and come all the way down quickly. And so sometimes, we're aware of the fact that if we're running on a treadmill, and, I used to do this at the gym. So I would run on the treadmill, and then when I was finished, I would walk and I would see how fast I could get my heart rate to drop all the way back down to what I knew was baseline. How quickly can my heart rate basically just recover? Be like, we're cruising, we're chill, as opposed to we're recovering from that run for another 30 minutes or 15 or whatever it is, or an hour. So heart rate variability is overall a measure of how adaptable and resilient we are. So how well we're recovering from whatever exertion we've just made. And I'm going to read a little bit of my notes for you on heart rate variability here. So as I said, it's the amount of time between your heartbeats, and it fluctuates slightly. You can only measure it with devices like the Aura or Whoop, and others. I'm not familiar with others, but there are many, I'm sure. And the fluctuations are undetectable by us, but with the devices we can understand where they are, and they are indicative of future health problems like heart conditions, mental health issues, mood disorders, and a lot more, or how kind of overall healthy we are. And I was always interested in HRV as a measure of total system kind of well-being and longevity, which they correlate HRV often with longevity, also VO2 max. So it's a measure of resilience and recovery or transition between nervous system states. And as you probably also know, brain and nervous system and psychological states affect physical states as well. So stress can cause inflammation, but also, food allergies can cause stress. So it's very much bi-directional. And our brain and our nervous system are therefore affecting our heart health. Our senses, sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, feed information to our brain and then to our heart about our environment. And very often those are subconscious or subperceptual. So our skin is noticing a change in temperature, humidity. Our body may notice a pressure change. You're going to notice, elevation changes, dehydration, light. I'm super sensitive to light. So my body knows, and I sense something in my body, and then I realize, oh, the light's changed, or the sun is setting or whatever it is. And all of this affects our heart, which tells our heart to speed up or slow down. And the connection to our heart is considered the part of the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system is what happens when we're not in charge of it. We're not consciously in charge of it, right? It's a part of our brain and our nervous system, which means also physical nerves, not just like how nervous we are, but physically the health of our nerves. And it's all operating, without our direct intervention. The enteric nervous system. So any of you who have taken my gut health or brain health classes know about the enteric nervous system, which is where the nervous system is completely intertwined with our gut. Completely intertwined. Like the whole system all the way down, nerves and gut health. So if you have a nervous system, you want to know about how that integrates with gut health, and that's the enteric nervous system. And again, that's all part of the nervous system. So there's sympathetic and parasympathetic. A quick review there. Sympathetic is the part of the nervous system that sort of sympathizes with this threat or with this stress. It's the dynamic part of the nervous system, and it's the fight or flight response, right? So our body activates, increases heart rate, blood pressure, sometimes body temperature, pupil dilation, sense perception, a whole bunch of different things, right? And it also downregulates less important priorities because we are in fight or flight and, survival mode, not like reproductive mode, for example. And then the parasympathetic state calms that down, recovers us from the emergency, slows the heart rate, blood pressure, and, lots of other things. Now, heart rate variability, just kind of looking through my notes here, I think we sort of talked about the relationship there. Basically, the variability between those heartbeats reflects how adapted your body is. And if your heart rate is highly variable, this is usually evidence that your body can adapt to many kinds of changes. People with high HRV are usually less stressed, happier, fitter, live longer, and all of that jazz. Low heart rate variability is generally considered a sign of poor health in a collective sense, and poor health as it relates to adaptability, resilience, and that sort of thing. So let's see here. Low heart rate variability is considered a sign of current or future health problems. It shows your body is less resilient and struggling to handle changing situations. So it's all about that change. And that's the other cool thing about adaptogenic herbs, which we can talk about in a minute. They're helping also with that change. So people think, oh, they're just making me impervious to stress. No, they actually stress your body out a little bit and they get you better at stress is here, I'm fitter, I can deal with it, and I can recover quicker. Lots of other things do that too. Let's see. You're resilient, and then typically the higher your resting heart rate, which is not generally a good thing, the lower your HRV. Now, it's very variable. So I have an extremely low resting heart rate. And that's just kind of a constitutional thing. Like, obviously I work out a lot and I take care of myself, and I know that I have a low resting heart rate. So combined, that means that my resting heart rate on a daily basis can be around 38, 39 beats per minute, which is very low. Now, and so HRV, let's give a range here in terms of what's good or not ideal. Let me pull up my little graph. So HRV, they tend to measure it between like 0 and 100, but it goes farther than that on the high end. Let me look and see what the mid-range is here, though. I forget the mid-range. So anything, if you are about, here's my favorite graph here. Sorry, I should have had this pulled up. But there's one HRV range. There we go. 0 to 50 ms is considered unhealthy. 50 to 100, and this, I've seen different graphs, but 50 to 100 means your health is compromised, or this is, I mean, this graph is saying that your health is compromised. I've seen graphs where if you're 75 to 100, you're great. So there's some ranges, right? But 50 to 100, you're compromised. 100 plus, you're healthy. Right now, my HRV, for reference, I'm looking at my aura right here, is around 200, which is why I was excited to talk about this today, because it's in a really good place. So 206 ms. Okay. You can see, never mind. I'll look at my aura ring thing all day. So again, 0 to 50, unhealthy, 50 to 100, compromised, 100 plus, healthy. It also depends on your age. And I don't want that graph to freak you out, because again, I've seen other graphs where that mid-range is a lot lower. That said, higher is better. So aim for high. Aim for as high as you can. I'll look around a little bit, and if I find a better graph, I'll put it in the show notes here. Yeah, because there's also like, are you an athlete? Are you not an athlete? That sort of thing. But that is it looks like the main range. All right, so you understand that. Now, how to improve, so low HRV, suboptimal, can be a result of dehydration, alcohol consumption, eating late, disrupted sleep, being sick, being under acute or chronic stress, having a bedroom that's too hot, jet lag, overtraining. So if you're exercising too hard and you're not allowing your body to recover, then that can cause your HRV to drop. There's also, HRV can also drop, right? Like after a workout, and then you watch it, and if it picks up higher than before, then it was ultimately a good thing, right? So you want to watch the trend over time, and you want it to be trending upward, right? Things that improve HRV. So there's a really good resource from Aura, and I'll include this resource from Aura as well as an HRV graph. I'm just writing that down so you can see that. And I'll also include a link to my Aura ring. It's like $50 off. If any of you are interested in getting an Aura ring, no pressure, obviously. But things that can improve HRV are obviously the opposite of everything that I just listed on that low HRV list. So staying hydrated, reducing alcohol consumption, eating too late at night, not exercising too late at night, sleeping at the right time, the right temperature. Consistency is huge for HRV. So the more consistent you are with your good health practices, the higher your HRV goes. Not being sick, managing stress is a big one. Cold showers, cold bedrooms, cold therapy in general, recovering from jet lag, and training consistently. And the other nice thing about the Aura ring, and I promise this is not an ad for an Aura ring, you can measure, these things however you want or not at all. But the nice thing about tracking your fitness is you can see if you're in a place where you need to do like a zone 2 training, which is like a low and slow, right? As opposed to something high intensity or strength. So I have to be careful about overtraining, because I'll just go hard every single day and think it's really fun and feel great. But under the hood, my body is like constantly trying to recover, and you don't want to be too far in that recovery mode all the time. You want to be in the middle zone where you're recovering actively and recovered actively, right? So sort of partially in both. There's also a lot of research into good stress, which is called hormesis. And hormesis is exposure to cold temperatures, exercise, not like risk and danger, like you're, being careless, but basically getting out of your comfort zone physically and psychologically regularly. And that is, again, it's like this resilience training, right? And the more we can do that, then the stronger, the more adapted, the more flexible, the more resilient, the better we are at recovery, the better we are at stress, the healthier we are overall. So again, our systems don't love this kind of culture of comfort. There's actually a new book out about that. It's called The Culture, let's see, Comfort Book, something like that. Something about culture and comfort. See if we can find it. No, these are all just about how to be cozy. I'll see if I can find the book for you, but it is that concept. And I'll write down hormesis in our show notes here. Hormesis for longevity. So to increase HRV, sleep well, exercise appropriately, eat really well, breathe, manage your stress, get a little hormesis, and again, just kind of balance how much time you are causing yourself to be stressed and how much time you're allowing yourself to recover. And you want to constantly be trying to shift that balance into the positive space. That was a lot on HRV. So hopefully that answered your questions. Let me know if anybody has any additional questions about HRV while we're live now. Otherwise, I will do a little recap here. Culture of Comfort book. I'll recap for us on HRV and we can move on. So we're going to do 2510. So recapping heart rate variability. So heart rate variability is the amount of time. Let me try that again. Heart rate variability is the variation between our heartbeats, where variation is ideal and reflective of our resilience overall. It's a common measure of total health, well-being, longevity, and specifically how resilient we are to stress, how well we manage it, how well we recover from it, from an autonomic or parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system state. Ways to improve HRV include sleeping well, eating well, training appropriately, managing stress, and pursuing the appropriate amounts of hormesis, which is positive stress for health. Okay, that was our recap. Thanks for letting me do those. Now the fun part. Now the travel smoothie. Let me grab my travel smoothie, which is in my cabinet right here, and I will show you what mine actually looks like. One sec. Oh, I lied. It's in my suitcase in the other room. Give me 2 seconds. All right. So the other thing that me just grabbing this out of my suitcase reminds me of is I travel enough and I hate packing that I will just leave parts of my suitcase packed. So this will stay packed. And when I get back from a trip, if I've had my travel smoothies, I'll refill this when I get back so that the next time I have to pack, it's already done. So if you travel a lot, consider that. Okay, so this opposite camera thing is such a trip. So yes, this is plastic. It's just ideal for travel. Also, it's the right, perfect size for smoothies, I find. In here, I actually have 3 travel smoothies because I want 1 for the flight to wherever I'm going. I want 1 for the flight back. And I want 1 just in case because I like to be prepared, as you can tell. And when it comes time to drink this, what I'll do is I'll add a little bit of water in the bottom of the smoothie cup so that the powder doesn't stick to the bottom. I'll toss this bag in, add the rest of the water, shake it up, and drink. Now, it's not blended, it's not fluffy and like cute and all that. However, it's a lifesaver, and this has been great for me so many times. And to the next point about continuous glucose monitoring, this is the most stable food meal that my glucose monitor measured the entire time I was measuring. So this was a 10 out of 10 on how stable does it keep your blood sugar. And that means you're going to be full for a long time, and your blood sugar is not going to spike and crash. So you won't have cravings and that sort of thing. This bag is starting to open a little bit because I have opened and closed it a lot already. So I'm going to be careful with it. Okay. So in this little sandwich bag, I have a lot more than it looks like. So here is my recipe. If you're taking notes, get out your pens and pencils. In here, this dark color, I put in 2 to 3 heaping tablespoons of hemp protein. And I use the Terrasol, I'll put that in the show notes, Terrasol, or Nutiva brand. So we'll do hemp protein Nutiva or Terrasol. And I use those brands because I can buy Terrasol in like a 5-pound bag. And Nutiva, I also would buy in like a 3-pound bag. They're one ingredient, just straight up hemp protein, and they're high fiber. So that is what I want in a plant-based protein. I don't want a bunch of fancy, look, I drink a lot of different things. Some of them are fancy, some of them are not. However, the fact that I can just have straight up hemp, which people are generally not allergic to at all. It is plant-based, it's high fiber, it's one ingredient, and I can buy it in bulk from a very good quality, very good source. That is the jam. This is important because of the fiber aspect. So you can use other protein powders if you want, but the more fiber you have, the more full and stable you're going to be kept. Side note, those of you who like keto, keep in mind that if you're super low carb and you eat a protein powder, your body can convert it into glucose because it needs glucose for fuel. So that's just a side note. I felt like adding that in there for some reason. And number 2, what was my other point? I forgot my other point. Okay, so then I do about a tablespoon, probably heaping, of oats. Totally optional. You do not have to do this. As you know, I'm generally not a big fan of grains. However, these are sprouted oats and I like them. They're not cooked, whatever. They're a prebiotic, fiber, they're an herb, they're grain. They're a little something that I like in my smoothies or my smoothie bowls to chew. Oats were part of what I ate when I moved to New York City and I could afford basically nothing. I have a little love affair with them in small quantities like this because they're good for the chew, they're good for the fiber, and I enjoy them. I just see a question about HRV in here. Okay, Carolyn, I'll get back to your HRV question in a sec. I'm going to finish this smoothie bit. So I like them. You don't have to do oats if you don't want to, but if you want to, it's fun. I also do at least a teaspoon of a prebiotic fiber. So I'm just going to write these ingredients down. Prebiotic fiber. I'll put these in the show notes too. Only for subscribers, don't worry. I'm not giving away this recipe for free. So the prebiotic fiber is important too, because again, this is going to keep you very full. You could do, if you don't have fiber like this on a regular basis, start slow and work your way up. If your body is comfortable with it, you could put in 2 teaspoons, which is really going to keep you full. But if you're not used to that amount of fiber, it's just going to make you gassy. So work your way up. All of us should be able to handle 2 teaspoons or more of a really good fiber blend. But again, you need to get there over time. It's important. So you've got your protein, you've got your fiber, you have oats if you want. I add goji berries in here because there's no fruit otherwise, right? So it's not a sweet mix. But with the goji berries, you do get some fruit. If you let them sit over time, they absorb moisture and become soft and kind of like raisins. And if you don't, then there's something to chew. So that's really nice. I also add dragon fruit powder. So you can see that here. You don't have to use dragon fruit powder if you want to be that fancy. But if you have any kind of fruit that you like, you can do a blueberry powder or a raspberry or a blend or like any kind of berry type blend powder. That's also going to give you some fruit that you just add water to, right? So I'm just writing these notes down. Instead of the goji, you could also do a different dried fruit if you want. Fruit powder. And then the other thing that you can do, which is really great, is you can add a greens powder. So greens powder doesn't have to taste nasty. I like Amazing Grass. It tastes great. Or Four Sigmatic, and I'll put all these notes in for you. Four Sigmatic just released some new powders. They have fruit, they have greens, and they have like a lavender spirulina magnesium situation, which is really nice. I wouldn't really put that in a smoothie, but you could put the fruit and the greens in here. And so basically what you have now is greens, fruit, fiber, protein with fiber, and some of those oats, some of that like complex low carbohydrate. You could also add chia seeds or flax meal ground or hemp seeds if you wanted some additional fiber, omegas, healthy fats. And it's TSA approved. It is super travel friendly. I can't tell you how many times this has saved my life. And again, I just always pack an extra because that flight's going to be delayed and you're going to be starving. You'd be like, why am I at Panda Express right now trying to find something healthy in an airport? Do that. Bring 3 if you want. Okay. So that is it. That is my travel. Oh yeah. So this one, I can see I've got some chia seeds in there. And look, does it taste like a smoothie? Like kind of, but it's worth it. It's worth it. Just think about how good it is for you the whole time. Okay. So that's the travel smoothie situation. And I have like dragon fruit powder on my hands. Let me hop back to, Carolyn's question here about HRV. Before I do that, sorry, I'm going to recap the travel smoothie quickly and then. Actually, I'm not, I'm not going to recap this because those are highlights for the public and this one stays between us, subscribers only. That's what you get for subscribing. You get the juicy content. Okay, so Carolyn's question is, I average 25 to 30 for HRV. I'm 44 years old. Do you think that mold could be contributing to keeping it low? Well, first thing I would say is that just a reminder that HRV is very individualized. So it will, like my good will be different from your good, will be different from somebody else's good. However, the consensus from what I know about HRV is that 25 to 30 is lower than you want it, right? It's not over 100. And mold certainly could be a factor. What I would say is, are you doing all of those things that we talked about? Is your sleep awesome? Is your nutrition awesome? Is your stress management awesome? Are you doing some kind of cold therapy or cold bedroom or something to help your sort of temperature control adjustment, or that getting some of that hormesis? Are you training well? Are you getting enough high intensity, enough zone 2 or moderate, and enough recovery? Are you tracking anything else? Like, how is your resting heart rate? How is your respiration rate? How is your body temperature? How do you feel? How do you seem? So Carolyn, I mean, you're here live right now with this question. Maybe let me know, like, are you doing all those things and you feel amazing, and your blood work is good, and your thyroid is good, all this stuff. So HRV, again, is very holistic. So I would want to know, if you feel like you're like, yes, all of that is dialed, I'm in such a good place, I don't understand why my HRV is low, then I would look at mold. Mold would not be the first place I would look. If you know that you have a mold situation, though, you definitely want to address that. But it's not so much that there's a direct correlation between mold and HRV, as much as mold can act maybe like an illness in your body, right? Or cause inflammation, or do these certain things. So yeah, I would explore all that. And I would also, if you haven't done this, I would look at other devices and tests and things to track your overall health, your blood pressure and your cholesterol and your hormone balance and your nutrient levels, and maybe even your sleep and those sorts of things. And then, it looks like there's a question about what's a good respiration rate. I don't know the range for respiration rates offhand. It's going to be related to your fitness level, your heart rate, your size, a lot of other things. I think mine is like 15. Let me see if I can check quickly for you. Yeah, my respiration my respiration rate is about 15, and it looks like it fluctuates between 15 and 14, actually. Over the last several months, it's never really changed between 15 and 14. So I hope that helps. And we can obviously talk about HRV more in the future as well. I am going to now answer a question about continuous glucose monitoring and food. So when I was wearing that glucose monitor, so this question is regarding food and CGM, have any foods spiked your glucose that you were surprised about? And have you made any lifestyle or dietary changes based on the data you are collecting? The only food that I was surprised by is a banana all by itself. And some of you are like, yeah, why were you surprised by that? Like, I don't think it's a low GI, which is a glycemic index food, and you eat it by yourself, like, of course, it's going to spike your blood sugar. But one of the things that we do know is, this kind of goes back to that keto protein point that I was making. If we are not eating any carbohydrates, or barely eating any carbohydrates, then we lose the ability to eat them and have a healthy glucose response. And you can get that back. You just have to eat good carbs over time. And we need carbs. Our brain needs carbohydrates. Our body needs carbohydrates. It's our primary and first form of fuel. However, we don't need sugar. We don't need processed sugar. We don't need flour. We don't need as many grains and legumes as we think we need. We just need good, slow carbohydrates from primarily vegetables and some fruit. So I'm a fan of eating moderate amounts of healthy carbohydrates. I eat primarily plant-based, and I eat a high carb, low fat diet in terms of my macros. And when you do that, you gain the ability to process carbohydrates in a healthy way and have moderate spikes in your blood sugar, right? And that is called insulin resistance or tolerance. And yet, there is still the reality that certain foods are higher glycemic index, glycemic load. Those are two different measures of how quickly they spike your blood sugar, and others are lower, right? So I try to eat a very low glycemic diet in general. And a banana is not a low glycemic index. It's going to pick your blood sugar up quickly, and then it tends to drop it, right? Sugar's the worst, right? Processed sugar is going to spike you super fast and then drop you below where you were, and you're going to feel like garbage and you're going to want more, and then you get this sugar craving crash situation. I was surprised to see a graph that showed me what a banana by itself did. And this happened only once, maybe twice, because I was actually eating dried bananas. It was like a treat that I was enjoying. And I was super hungry, right? It was like the afternoon. I was traveling and I ate those, and I saw the spike go, I was low blood sugar, picked me up. I'm like, that's great. And then I saw it drop very fast after that, which makes perfect sense. There's no fiber, there's no fat, there's no protein, and I didn't have my next meal for another couple of hours. So to see that was a very clear example to me of, fine, eat a banana or dried banana or dried fruit, which we know is even, quicker on the pickup and the drop, but either pair it with something that's going to slow that roll, slow that digestion, or make sure your next meal is coming up fairly soon, because it's not going to hold you over. And like, logically, I know that, but it's still very, very helpful to see a graph just show me that, especially because I'm so carb adapted in general, right? Like, I can eat carbs and be fine for a long period of time. And again, when I say carbs, I'm talking vegetables, basically. Vegetables and like squashes and that sort of thing. And I do eat fruit, but I, generally am not eating it by itself. So that was the one, to answer your question, that was the one food that picked my glucose up. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call that a spike. It was a rise that was, fairly quick and, short, but it wasn't like what sugar is going to do, like a processed sugar. So that one was interesting. And the other thing that was interesting for me to see on the opposite end of the spectrum is that my travel smoothie was a 10 out of 10. I knew it was good, but I didn't know it was a 10 out of 10. So that's great. And then the second part of the question is, have you made any dietary or lifestyle changes based on the data that you're collecting? That was the only one. Now, the big caveat is that I only wore the monitor for 2 weeks, for 14 days, and I'm working on doing it again with that company. I am not right now, because I'm kind of I have one more to wear, and I'm just saving it because I want to work with them and see if I can offer some things to my community and that sort of thing. So I'm just waiting. But in 2 weeks, those were the big learnings. The rest of it was sort of like, the way I eat is ideal, which, as you know, I work on. So it was nice to have that kind of reinforcement. Okay, or encouragement. Let's see here. Now, the next question, which will probably be our last question, but before I go to that one, I want to see, Carolyn had one more question about HRV here. So Carolyn said, I recently developed chronic fatigue, so I struggle with cardio and exercise. I swim, walk, yoga, hike, but low HRV may be cardio issue. Everything else is pretty dialed in. Okay. Yeah, good, Carolyn. I'm sorry to hear about the chronic fatigue. I would say that's probably what you're seeing with the HRV. If you have chronic fatigue, then that's going to be, one of those major indices that your HRV is picking up on, which is, kind of overall health. Now, of course, again, explore that mold if you know you have it or you suspect. And I think we can talk about that in the next session next week. I won't have time to get into it today. But definitely worth ruling that out, and then just working on all those other, kind of foundational pillars and considerations and stuff that we talked about before. All right. Let me take a sip of water, and then we'll talk about our last point. or a few sips of water. Okay. So the last question is, I would love to hear your thoughts on juicing, mostly green, very little fruit. I love how it makes me feel, and I understand some of the benefits, but I also feel bad about purposely not having the fiber too. If you feel like it can be beneficial, how would it be best to implement it into one's routine? As a weekly, full day thing, or a daily add-on to to break a fast? Thank you so much. I look forward to yet another amazing session. Thank you. I appreciate that note. And I too am a big fan of juicing, something I've done for probably 10 years at this point, not every day. I go through phases. Sometimes I'm doing it every day for many months and then I take a break. Just kind of depends. But here are the notes that I wrote down for you guys related to juicing. So, number one, overall, fiber is key in our lives. It is the number one nutrient that Americans are deficient in. We do not get enough fiber, and it is beneficial for so many things: gut health, detoxification, which helps liver health, elimination, which helps your whole digestive system, and colon health, brain health, blood sugar stability, skin, and on and on. So fiber and water will not be what stated. Now, and juicing removes all the fiber. So why the heck would I do that? But juicing allows us to consume a ton of vegetables at one time. So the juice that I make when I make juice fills up one of these, and I'll often, I would drink a whole one of these in a day. It's a lot for somebody who doesn't juice, but I'm not really afraid of doing that. Or even half, if you're trying to like make it last. And that can be an entire bunch of celery, an entire head of collard greens, a cup of parsley or cilantro, a lemon or multiple whole cucumbers, kale or collard greens, if you put those in there. I feel like I'm forgetting one. Ginger, citrus peels, that sort of thing. So would you eat all of that in a day normally? No, So not only do you get to consume a whole bunch of vegetables, but you absorb it all. There's no fiber in the way, right? And you can just kind of drink it throughout the day. You also get these live enzymes. It's a raw food, so if you're into raw or live food, there's all of that. It's really phenomenal. It's concentrated, plant-based nutrition in a highly absorbable form. One of my favorite times to juice is after I work out. I've fasted for 15 hours. I just worked out. My body is thirsty for whatever it is. Ooh, bell peppers are also really good to juice. And you drink a juice, I just imagine it just saturating my cells, and it's so great. So what I would say is juice without fruit to keep it lower sugar and lower, GI or glycemic load, which this person is doing, Meg is doing, mostly greens, very little fruits. A glass of juice goes a long way. So I'm, being a monster when I drink a whole quart, but you could have 6 ounces, 8 ounces, 10 ounces. One of those a day would be incredible, right? So even a small glass of high quality juice like that is going to go a long way. So if you're concerned about buying that much produce or creating that much waste, just have a little bit. Try that. Even a cup a week is a great idea, right? Any is better than none. Or consider a week a month where you juice, or a couple of weeks every quarter where you do juice. And you can eat other foods too. You don't have to do a juice cleanse, but if you have a juice a day, it's going to be helpful for your body. So maybe it's a thing that you cycle or, go into phases with, right? Keep eating fiber. So if you're juicing, make sure you get 30 plus grams of fiber from other sources. As Meg mentioned, it breaks a fast. So if anybody has questions about that, it 100% breaks a fast. So you can fast and have it, but just know that it's definitely breaking the fast. You can have it any time of day, morning, midday, afternoon, evening. And then if you absolutely can't do this, or you don't have a juicer, or you don't want to do this, consider greens powders, right? So that's a good way to get concentrated greens without the waste on a regular basis. And that I will do every single day. I have a greens powder every single day, in addition to eating mostly vegetables, right? I will even have greens powders when I'm juicing. So that's another option. Otherwise, I highly recommend juicing if you're into it. And I would just say, do it at a level that you're comfortable with in terms of the fiber or the waste creation, I suppose. And with a good juicer, you're not creating a ton of waste. So like I made a juice the other day that was this whole, quart size. And there was about, if I smashed it with my hand, there was about a handful of fiber waste from a whole bowl, like, giant mixing bowl full of vegetables. So it's not as inefficient as it can sometimes seem. Better your juicer, the better it's going to be at doing that. And on that note, I will put a link to my juicer. And with that, I'm going to do a little recap here on juicing. That will be at, what are we at? 55:15. Okay. So recapping juicing, my juicing tips are juice without fruit or with really minimal fruit to keep it low sugar, lower glycemic, just a stabler experience. Consider even a cup of juice a day or a cup of juice a week. You don't have to drink a whole quart at once if you don't want to do something like that. Consider doing it periodically, so once a month or every season as another way to cycle with juicing. Keep eating fiber, so make sure to get 30 grams of fiber every day, regardless of whether or not you're juicing. Reminder that it does break a fast if you practice intermittent fasting. You can have a juice any time of day. And if you're not interested in juicing, or you're interested in doubling your juice intake, or you're traveling, consider greens powders. Okay, let's see. We've got a couple more questions here, which I will answer before we wrap up. Oh, one is a thank you. You're so welcome, Meg, always. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your great question. And we have another question. Oh, this is also a great question. Do you switch up your greens powder or stick with Amazing Greens? Yeah, Amazing Grass. I really like Amazing Grass. I haven't switched that up until just like this month, because Four Sigmatic released their powders and they sent me the green to test. And so right now I'm using their green. Will I buy their green? Probably not. I'll probably stick with Amazing Grass. The reason why I like Amazing Grass is the ingredients are fantastic. I find the price to be right. And most of all, you get all these super dense greens and the flavor is great. You can drink it on its own and it's nice. It's really nice. So it does not ruin a smoothie. You don't have to plug your nose to drink it. I do that with a lot of things. It just tastes great. So that goes a long way in terms of being able to have it on a daily basis, right? Because if it tastes gross, it's just hard to handle long term. And as you clearly know, I'm committed to this one. There are others out there. A lot of people like athletic greens. I can't remember. I had it a long time ago. I can't remember what it tasted like, but I believe that one is probably comparable. And other than that, I'm not super up on greens powders, to be honest. I feel like they had a moment. They're not having their moment right now. Coffee alternatives are having the spotlight. So anyway, thank you all so much for joining. And to everyone who's watching the recording, thank you for being a subscriber. I really appreciate it. I think these are just going to continue to be more and more awesome. We're going to have some guests in the future, lots of that. So I will have the show notes up soon. The recording will be up soon, and we meet again next week. So when I put all this up, I will include a link to the open thread where you can drop questions, and we will talk about mold next time. We will talk about colonics next time, and we will talk about whatever other juicy topics come up for us to cover then. Thank you again. Stay really well, and I will see you next week. Bye.